My losses, I think, expedited my return to my practice. It had been something I'd wanted to do, but I got to the point that after several bereavements, I really needed to come back to my work to process things in a way that works for me. And in essence, that's where all of the work comes from. It comes from a process of doing the emotional labor that becomes the physical labor. And the work itself is comes from that generative activity. It is a byproduct of that work or that labor, or a report from that time of doing that work. My work very much comes from my life in terms of quite frequently it is the living that comes first and gets figured out through the work. And I think in terms of relating to other people, while it comes from my biography, the things that I've experienced aren't unique to me, and I hope that they offer a way for people to connect their own stories, and in some way, you know, my being able to say these difficult things enables other people not to have to, or it opens up a way for them to have that conversation. I think there is something that happens to people that have experienced major bereavement, and I have deemed it as a kind of a superpower, where in a way a lot of the things that we've held fall away, like caring about what people think of us or being afraid to do certain things. And I think that my superpower has been being able to say these difficult things. And while they help me in doing so, I hope that they also may help other people. It's something that's very particular to this show, in that, like, I think there's maybe two strands of my working, and one is in a quite heady fashion or conceptual fashion where it's thoughts and ideas. And a place where I got to with this show was through continuous making, through going back into the studio day after day after day and making. And that allowed me to kind of drop down into another place that, you know, out of my head but into my body, and make from a more intuitive place. And it's as if I'm the architect of these signs and symbols and materials that make up my language, but I'm learning it as I go along, and it's not quite at my command, so I just need to keep going back into the studio and listening to be able to grab this language and turn it into something, into what I feel for this show are kind of psychic totems from my, as I said, the work that I'm doing emotionally, not just physically. Make. Absolutely, go in and make, and not to overthink, and not to procrastinate for perfection, which is something I have had a problem with in the past, but to, not to try and make something that is perfect, because it will hold you back, and it will create a sense of failure that won't help you. And, the imperfections in things are part of showing what you have been through it, what loss or other experiences you've had. Yes, I write as well as making visual art, and they are quite often one and the same. In this exhibition there are, with some works, short texts alongside them. With others it's just titles, but even the titles and materials are very important to have that element of text. And I see them as not separate, so it's not telling a story next to an object. It is the two things are in conversation. They are a synthesis making a whole, and I think maybe that placement of language, which is somewhat absolute, next to sculpture, which is abstract, together creates a way in to the work. And it is the work, itself that is telling the story of something that's happening in the world, but I think the language just opens up to make it in some way perhaps even more accessible. Many of the works in the show are ongoing, and the importance of that for me was that this would be a year of making, and I would continuously make for the year. And when it came to the point of having the show, that the work in it was where I was with making at that point in the year. And it was also a reflection on where the key point in the work was, which was in the making, not in the showing. So that I could show work that was, and I wouldn't even use the work in progress, because that seems to define that there is an end point that is the showing, but ongoing in that it is the doing that is the fulcrum of the work. So yes, those works will be continuing. In terms of new work, I don't kind of work so much on a project basis, or have something that something thematic or something like that I work on. And because my work comes from my life, it is a matter of keeping going personally, and then what comes from that. What do I need to do? What do I need to deal with? So it's seeing what comes up in that manner. I'm going straight from this exhibition back to Donegal, where I'm artist in residence at ArtLink in Fort Dunree, and I'm doing a talk for the Donegal Visual Artists Network. I'll also be back at Fort Dunree to do the last leg of my residency there. Later in the year, I will be part of a group show that is curated by Brian Teeling and Ashlyn Clark for the Gay Men's Health Network. And next year I'll be at the Courthouse in County Clare for a 2-person show with Ciara O'Connor.